as Caroline said, I've been a pediatric RN for 40 years. And very early on in my career, I began to realize that traditional Western approaches to health, especially when it came to children's health, was not enough. It's part of the puzzle, but we need more. And that's when I began delving into nutrition and toxicity and all the environmental pollutants that are affecting our health. And so I promise tonight I am going to talk a little bit about the problems we have these days, but I promise to spend the bulk of the time on solutions. So let's start with some of the issues today. We're in a bit of a mess. 54% of our kids have one or more chronic illness. That's asthma, allergies, ADHD, type 2 diabetes, autism, cancer. So we really have some issues to deal with today. The Center of Disease Control tells us 1 in 6 children have either a neurological, a developmental, or a behavioral disorder. And 1 in 6 children in regular public schools today receive special education. And about 5 million, or 10% of our kids, are diagnosed with ADHD. We all know only too well the autism rate of 1 in 68, and a recent survey said it's more like 1 in 45. So we have 12 million children with type 2 diabetes, and that's total lifestyle and diet. That really has very little to do with the genetics we bring into the world with us. The obesity rates between the ages of 6 and 19, 30 years ago, it was about 5% of our kids had an obesity issue. Now 17% of children are obese. But this one really got me. 25% of children between the ages of 5 and 10 have elevated cholesterol. And one of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit later is typically elevated cholesterol, even in adults, is an indication of inflammation. And inflammation is one of the underlying causes of a lot of illnesses today. But it's caused by stress, it's caused by sugar, it's caused by processed food, and it's caused by toxins in our environment. So we have a quarter of our children with elevated cholesterol, not necessarily in need of statin drugs, which, by the way, is a $29 billion a year industry. So if elevated cholesterol very often is an indication of inflammation, but we're treating it with the $29 billion prescription for statin drugs, that's really not getting to the root cause of that inflammation. Over 270 different types of chemicals are now being found in our newborn babies. So our babies are being born pre-polluted. We used to think that the placenta protected a child throughout the pregnancy, but as hard as that organ works, it doesn't protect the baby from this overwhelming amount of toxins that we're exposed to. So some people say, well, you know, is there really a connection between children's development and these environmental toxins? And this is a study done from a Dr. Palmer at University of Texas. And he found that on average, for each 1,000 pounds of environmentally released mercury, there was a 43% increase in the rate of special education services and a 61% increase in the rate of autism. So we definitely know that these chemicals that we're exposed to are affecting our children. And I believe there's been a perfect storm. And that's what's led to this problem. I'd like to, as everyone else would, just point to that one thing. And if we just dealt with that one thing, we'd be all better and our kids would be fine. But we have a conglomeration of issues that have coalesced. And one of them is that toxins have been proliferating in the past 100 years and very few regulations. I went to Washington a couple years ago to talk to our congressman about children with autism, and he said, he told me the figure that for every congressperson, man or woman, there are 12 lobbyists. So they're from the chemical industry, they're from various industries that want to have their influence over that politician. So unfortunately, there's in Europe, they also had 87,000 chemicals they were able to access, but they were smart enough to remove 1,400 of them from their world. And for us in the US, we've only been able to remove 10.